So I think Race to Zero has had a really extraordinary 4 years since it launched, and not just because it coincided with COVID and changes in the COP process and all those things, but because in that time, and I think in large part through the work of the campaign, this idea of reaching net zero emissions has gone from a sort of abstract global goal to a concrete target that thousands and thousands of entities around the world have said we are going to do in our own operations, in our own world, in our own value chains. And that's a really profound sort of grounding of the global multilateral process into the reality of the lives, the day-to-day actions that we all are engaged with. So I think that that translation of scientifically set global goals into daily action is huge. And I think the Race to Zero has done a huge amount to drive it forward. The role of non-state actors, cities, businesses, others in the climate change regime is one of the most exciting innovations in global governance we've seen. And the Race to Zero is very much at the core of that innovation. And it's come from a fundamental realization that to reach these big global goals we've set on reducing emissions and building resilience, we need to have all hands on deck. We need to actually have governments, of course, setting targets and delivering policy and all the things they need to do. But to implement that requires all of us, all parts of society. And this fundamental change in thinking is now, I think, very mainstream in the UNCCC process, but also more generally. And so I think that's a really important change in our political technology, if I can borrow a phrase from the book, that's actually making us much more effective. Now, of course, it's not a panacea. And when you have this new world, you have new problems that come up, new issues. For example, if some city or company commits to net zero, how do we know they're really doing it? Equally importantly, how do we know they have the capacity and resources to actually deliver on these targets? How do we build and strengthen those capacities? These are really important questions that we're now grappling with as we're kind of in the implementation phase, as opposed to the mobilization phase of the net zero journey, broadly speaking. But I think the Race to Zero campaign has done a huge amount to put us into this exciting new, let's get it done kind of landscape. Absolutely. So we've seen a number of cases where companies have been taking impressive voluntary steps, but haven't been thinking about this final piece of how they bring their own actions into the mainstream and make sure the playing field is getting leveled for everyone. And possibly it's because a little bit of a disconnect internally between, say, the political affairs department and sustainability department. But sometimes it's actually revealing something more about uncertainty about the company's own commitment. Like, are you really going to take the hard choice of committing yourself through rules to get there as opposed to voluntary flexibility? And I think what I would say to companies who are wavering a bit on that line is that, there's no question that rules are coming. The question is, what rules will they be and how quickly will they be put in place? And if you are a leader on climate change, you're going to benefit from having better rules sooner and having worse rules later. It's actually all the laggards who are benefiting from having worse rules later. So the more you can connect what you're doing in your own target setting to your broader advocacy, your public affairs work, your political engagement, you're going to be able to really create the conditions for that strategy to flourish. So for Race to Zero partners, I think it's extremely important to lean into the fifth P, persuade, and to help us all bring that floor up even as we continue to reach for the stars.